The courtroom was packed that Tuesday morning, with tension palpable in the air. Across from her sat Karen Whitfield, dripping with self-satisfaction like perfume. Dressed in a well-fitted power suit, lips pursed in her telltale self-righteous way, she whispered confidently to her attorney, clearly believing she had already emerged victorious. The infamous HOA president of Willowbrook Estates had come to teach the stubborn rancher a lesson, or so she thought. Judge Morrison sat down and brought the case to order. She gazed at me. "Mr. Mitchell, do you have an attorney?" I stood up slowly, unfastened my tie with a firm, practiced hand. "Your Honor, I'll be representing myself." Karen's attorney, a young, arrogant guy named Bradley Cooper, smiled amused. Poor kid had no idea of what was in store for him. "Very well," said the judge. "Do read your qualifications for the record." I cleared my throat. Thomas Mitchell, former attorney, 35 years at Mitchell and Associates, property law and civil litigation expert, member of the state bar since 1987. The smirk on Cooper's face vanished. Karen's jaw actually dropped before she recovered. Honest to goodness, I had left the courtroom years ago for a life of solitude and peace. I purchased the 100-acre Cedar Ridge Ranch to escape just this kind of nonsense. No neighbors, no HOA, just me, my horses, and an occasional weekend visit from my grandbabies. The ranch, which had been owned by the Hendersons for 3 generations, had one solid guarantee attached to it. Never had it ever been part of any homeowners association. But peace never arrives if an individual like Karen Whitfield is voted into office. It was a crisp autumn morning when I first met her. I was mending a fence when a white Lexus sport utility vehicle arrived at my gate. Out stepped a 50-year-old woman with bleached hair, a clipboard, and the demeanor of one who was used to being trailed around. "Excuse me," she shouted, standing tall at the gate. "I'd like to discuss community trail access with you." I set down my hammer and approached, standing behind the gate. "Can I assist you?" "I'm Karen Whitfield, HOA president of Willowbrook Estates," she declared, as if I should be impressed. "We're constructing a new community trail system and need an easement across your land in order to connect to the county trails." I could have laughed. "Ma'am, this is private property, not in your HOA, never was." Her smile stiffened. "Well, that is what we have to discuss. The subdivision has voted this trail system will increase property values and promote healthy living." "That's great, your subdivision," I murmured, "but this ranch isn't part of it." She snapped her clipboard with a manicured nail. "Mr. Mitchell, you don't appreciate it. When the people decide that something is in the interest of the common good, individual holdouts can't just stifle progress." And that's when I knew she'd be a problem. "No, ma'am," I said. "I get it fine. The answer's no. Have a nice day." I stepped back to go back to work on my fence. I heard her huff over my shoulder and the car door slam shut. From nuisance to nightmare. Over the next 6 months, Karen's campaign got underway. First were the letters, official, threatening letters on HOA letterhead, demanding my attendance at meetings I didn't have to go to. Then there were the fake county complaints, complaints of violations inspectors automatically dismissed. She even had community walks that stopped at my property line, gaping like tourists at an exhibit. The flashpoint came in April. I arrived at my back gate to find the padlock cut and tire tracks covered in mud. Trail markers had been screwed into trees on my gated drive. I spent the day yanking them out and installing security cameras. The footage was revealing. At 2 a.m. that Tuesday, Karen herself arrived, bolt cutters in hand, flanked by 2 members of the HOA board, trespassing on my property to install further markers. The second week, I had a steel gate welded into place, reinforced with concrete posts. My lawyer drafted a cease and desist letter. That was when Karen made her biggest mistake. She sued me. The complaint was hand-delivered to my front door on a Friday afternoon by a process server who looked almost apologetic to be bothering me. Karen and the HOA were suing me for malicious obstruction, interference with easements, and, my personal favorite, causing a public nuisance. She asked for $50,000 in damages, removal of all barriers to access, and her lawyer's fees. The entire complaint was based on fantasy, implied easements, so-called community precedent, even a false claim that my property had once belonged to the HOA. I could have brought in the lawyers, but I didn't think it was worth it. I whipped out my old bar license and got to work. I provided my response in denial of all of the accusations and countersued for harassment, trespassing, and defamation. Back to the courtroom, Karen arrived that morning in tow. Two board members, her lawyer, and a wildly taking notes woman, no doubt for the HOA newsletter. She wore a minuscule HOA president pin as though sporting a badge of honor. Judge Morrison didn't know who I was initially, but she noticed the glint of recognition when I reviewed my credentials. "Mr. Mitchell," she said, leaning forward slightly, "welcome to my courtroom once again." Cooper started his opening statement, full of over-the-top theatrics. "I was a vengeance-seeking hermit holding hostage the community," he informed the court. "The trails had been present for years," he asserted, "and Karen was merely serving the greater good. When it came to me, I let the evidence speak." "Your Honor," I began, placing papers on the table, "this is the 1952 original deed, the 2021 survey, 3 sworn affidavits of 3 former owners spanning 60 years, no easements, no HOA, no public access, ever." Then I showed printed stills from my security footage. "This is Miss Whitfield cutting my locks, installing markers, and trespassing 6 times. Judge Morrison raised an eyebrow. "Miss Whitfield, is that you?" Karen flushed. "That's out of context." "So you've confessed to trespassing?" the judge asked. Cooper sprang into the argument. "My client was acting on the belief an easement was present." I cut him off, pulling out one last exhibit. "Exhibit C, Your Honor, a tape-recorded phone call. Miss Whitfield says, quote, 'I don't care if he owns it. We'll make his life hell until he gives in.'" The courtroom went silent. Karen gasped out loud. "That was a private conversation," she shouted. "Tape from my side of the fence. Single-party consent, Your Honor. Entirely legal." It was all over after that. Cooper stumbled, mumbling something about the greater good, but Judge Morrison had heard enough. "Does your client have any proof whatever of an easement?" she asked. "We're still investigating," Cooper replied feebly. "So that's no," she said. "Mr. Mitchell, do you wish to proceed with your counterclaims?" "I do." The next 20 minutes were a lawyer-approved dismemberment. Karen's entire line of complaints was struck with prejudice. My countercomplaints were upheld in full. Karen was ordered to pay $15,000 in damages, $5,000 in lawyer fees, and she was served a permanent restraining order, 500 feet as a minimum. But Judge Morrison wasn't through. "Miss Whitfield," she stated firmly, "your behavior has been egregious. You abused your power, harassed a citizen, and wasted the time of this court. I'm referring the case to the district attorney for potential criminal prosecution." And then she turned to Cooper. "Counselor, I suggest you review the State Bar's ethics and good faith requirements. I'm issuing you a written warning." 3 days later, I received a letter from the HOA. Karen had been voted out unanimously and prohibited from serving on the board for life. 2 months thereafter, she pleaded guilty to misdemeanor trespass. The penalty, 12 months probation and 500 hours of community service. Ironically, none of this allowed close to HOA activity. 6 months after that, the state law school invited me to give the keynote lecture for their continuing education series. My talk, "When Karens Attack," a case study in HOA overreach. The video went viral. Karen has become a warning sign, not a name. The Legal Aid Society, I donated my $20,000 judgment to name a new conference room in their building after me, the Whitfield Warning Room. Last I knew, Karen moved 3 states away, a receptionist at a small real estate firm. Her HOA takeover dreams dashed by the law she broke.